Open House Thursday is always a gisting time. So we saw something that trended on Twitter. A lady came out to say her friend, who was about to get married, found out she was pregnant and she was considering abortion because she's married to a youth leader. She was about to get married to a youth leader, and while it was just a month to the pregnancy, the advice was at first, you could try and hide the pregnancy into the wedding, but they said the church does pregnancy test a few days to the wedding, just to be sure you're not pregnant. So it seemed like the only option for this young lady to do is to carry out abortion. And here we're discussing, why would... We've heard these stories before. I've heard it before. I've heard people say that they did abortion just because they wanted to get married. I've heard other kinds of stories, and the conversation is it right? Should we commit a sin to hide a sin? And to what length are we going to go to look right, you know, in the face of others? And I'd like to start with you, Mariam.
Oh, interesting. Thank you. So I think this is a conversation that's been going on for a bit this week, and I've heard many views. But my view is, see, most churches have doctrines and it's clearly stated. So if you participate, if you're part of a church, you know what their doctrine says about being married and not being pregnant or being pregnant. So you know exactly what is expected of you. And I guess also as a youth leader, you're part of, you know, how the church runs. So you, more than anyone else, you know exactly what is expected. And it's important that we understand why the church made this compulsory. So first of all, I'm like, okay, if it's just if it's just like a month, she'll be able to have the wedding without it being noticeable. But then I guess why the church would insist on doing a test a few days to the wedding will be that there may be cases where people have gotten away with being pregnant and getting married. Meanwhile, those who their own show are the ones punished. So because I don't see yours, you're not going to be not punished, but that does not affect you. But someone else, but all of you have committed the same sin, but one person's one is showing and the other one is not showing. So I guess for that, it's just to keep it fair, to say, okay, we'll do it to a few days before the actual event so that, you know, not a particular person doesn't get unfair, you know, like an unfair advantage. Now, if you know that you've done something, everything we do has a consequence. It has repercussions. Just be willing, just be ready to accept the consequence of your action and the repercussions for it, which is, I will not be able to do this wedding in church. I would rather, I know what I've done wrong, and so I will do it outside church. And I hear some of these marriages, you may not do in church, but they'll come and bless it for you. You can come, like if it's a Saturday wedding on a Sunday, you come and bless it for you. Because in the end, it's not about ticking the box of, we appeared here and we did it here. It's a lot more than those appearances. It's about the marriage itself. And so if that is important to you, if you understand the importance of that, you would not be thinking of, you know, doing an abortion to save face. And if you are not comfortable with the church saying that you should not be pregnant until you are married, then don't be part of that church.
Exactly.
Because we have, culturally, we have some cultures where they insist that you be pregnant before you get married, and people, you know, will come and celebrate. In fact, some cultures, if you are not pregnant before the marriage, you know, it may be a problem. So you can decide to do that, but if you're going to be part of the church, then do as the church says, but it will be foolish to now take out the child just because you want to save face.
I completely agree with Miriam. I think the members of the church here are to blame, not the institution of that church. They are subscribers to that institution. They were groomed there. The man himself, or the fiancé himself, is a youth pastor, youth leader, someone who says one thing, lives by another standard, so double standards. And then sex, obviously, is something that the church frowns upon. Before marriage, but then both of them had it and now they're considering abortion. So they are the ones at fault here. People always live by these standards that, you know, they create, and then they come out with do not judge kind of excuses. You are the one who went to that church, you subscribe to that church. You must live by what you believe. you must live by what you believe. That institution is an institution and is allowed to have its laws and rules that guides the subscribers or the followers. And, you know, for whatever reason the institution believes in, if you've been found, you know, guilty of violating any of these rules of that institution, you live with the consequence of it. So now that you are pregnant outside wedlock, be let me not use magnanimous.
Find another word.
Be,
Honest
you know,
enough.
courageous and honest enough to admit it publicly and step
with the
out of the
consequences.
system. Go to a registry, don't kill your child, get married, but step out of the system that you and unsubscribe to it.
No, but
and do things
we're
outside of
painting
it.
this like, oh, this is like an easy thing to do. It's not.
What's uneasy about it? It's even the
No,
sex
no, no,
said
no,
that
no.
was easy to abstain from, but you did not do that.
No, you have already, they've planned this wedding. We've gotten venue. Everybody has picked Ashwebi. There's a lot that has been put into it, you know. Families, everybody involved, everybody working towards this occasion, and then you suddenly find out you might even have been faithful all through, and just one night of, we're almost there, let me just hug you a little more. And then I hug you a little more, and one thing led to another, and the next thing, we have Bele. You know, and you know the way it used to happen in church that time, they be like good girls, they just have to do once. Just one scene like this. Man, some people are prostituting forever and ever, nothing will happen to them, but one good girl just does it once, and there are a lot at stake that you just feel like I don't want to bring shame to my family. BC.
So if this was done as a mistake, if this was a mistake that was done, you would know by the remorse they would show and by the way they would accept to take the consequences. When we are not perfect, people will fall. When you fall and you're remorseful about the fall, you will take the consequences with your full chest. You will be the one asking for the penance because you know that, God, this isn't me. I fell. I'm ready for the consequences. You will see it. You will not sit and be plotting abortion. So that showed me that it has been happening. They were just caught in the cross lines. But this also points to the hypocrisy of what we have when it comes to religion. A lot of people preach something different and do something different. And when they are caught in the cross lines like this, they start looking for an easy way out. And I had someone close back in the day who was caught exactly, when I saw the situation, I was like, yeah, I remember this person, exactly like this. And unfortunately, she did the abortion so that she could wed in church. I'm sorry to say, it doesn't mean that people who do abortions don't give birth to babies. But till today, she doesn't have a child. I'm not even joking.
Somebody mentioned
it could have
something
been
similar
that was the only child she was meant to have. But because she didn't want to, she wanted the safe space. The shame. She didn't want to just take the consequence. I've fallen, I'm sorry. Okay, since people are not going to wed me in church again, let me do the court or do the traditional and just move on with my life. And maybe after a while, people will accept me back into the fold. So the punishment the church or the religious bodies give is not to ostracize you for the rest of your life. They keep you on a bench. When you fall as a priest, you are kept on a bench to observe. You are suspended, but you are meant to come to church. I remember when we were in the university back in the day, if you do something and then they have to suspend you, as a choir member, you will be coming for rehearsals. You will come on Sunday very early, but you will not robe. You will come and do the practices, do the prayer, do everything, but you will not robe because you are benched, because you have committed something. You will wait out that time. So this is not like a life sentence. You know, they can bring you down from your position and all that till you learn the lesson. And then you will gradually grow in grace and get back to your position. It doesn't mean that if you don't wed in church, your children will not be blessed or that the marriage will not be blessed or anything will happen. So I think people need to start living by the consequences of their actions. So every day we are placed with a decision. You have to make decisions every day to live by what happens at the end of the day. And when it happens, use your chest to collect it because you were knocking behind. You know the rules. You went back to knack. It can't hook you now with belly. You won't come out.
We're still discussing about a lady who got pregnant and is considering abortion to cover her shame. Before we continue, let me invite you to call us on the show. Call us on 081-270-53687, or you can call us on 091-390-76948. Tweet to us and hashtag YourViewTVC so we can take your tweets. And, you know, while we discussed extensively a bit on the break. The conversation was around the fact that, you know, when you lie once, you're likely going to lie again to cover up the first lie. You're trying to cover up the shame, and that's what they were about to do. You fornicated, and then you want to commit abortion to cover up the evidence of your fornication. You steal money, then you will lie to cover up the fact that you stole money. And we are not willing to take consequences. I had a conversation with my in-law. She's a man married to my cousin, and he said that when I raise children, I'm not raising my children with the intention of disciplining them. I let them understand there are consequences for every action. If you don't read your book, the consequence is your parents are not so happy with you, and you will be, a lot of your things that you like will be taken away from you. You probably won't pass in school. If you eat a lot, the consequence is you might have tummy ache because you have overeaten. So we make that they teach the children to understand consequences for action, and if you've taken out this action, you must be willing to bear the consequences, good or bad. Are we dodging consequences? Are we?
And for me, I like that this story is a way to reinforce that teaching, where, because now, you know, with the way things are, we just have so many opinions, so many different kinds of values. We've thrown many things away because as long as you can argue your way out of anything, you know, for that time you're trending, you're doing well. But the truth is, because we have refused to be accountable for a lot of the wrong things that we have done, and instead found even more dubious ways to cover up for the things, not only in this situation of marriage, in so many other things, and we find ourselves just keep, you know, digging a hole for ourselves and going deeper and deeper. And it is because many of us have refused to accept accountability. We have refused to just realize I've made a mistake and I'm willing to go through whatever punishment I need to go through, face the consequences of what I've gone through, what I have done. Instead, I would look for another lie to cover up the one before. We have to remind ourselves. We expect it of our children. We don't expect it of ourselves. We think we're so smart. But the truth is, if you don't face that consequence today, it would show up in, in future for something even bigger, and you would have to face the consequence then. So it's important that when you do something and you have been called out or you realize it yourself, face the consequences, serve the time, and renew yourself and move on. There's a lesson to be learned. So we only see the shame of being caught. We don't realize that there's also like a character that is built from even doing that. There's a lot of positive that comes from learning humility, from learning even that, I'm disappointed in myself and then wanting to do better. You will do better once you are able to face the consequences of your action. But if any time you're able to get away from one thing, you just think, I'm so smart, I'll keep doing this until one day you're caught and there's no excuse or any dubious means left for you.
It's so true. So some people are some people feel like the church is being too harsh. There's a part in the Bible that says, he who has no sin should cast the first stone. You said they do your own. So because they catch me and you're now making it look like I'm the worst sinner in the world, when in actual fact, everybody has areas where we are going to meet God to forgive us. Nima, would you say that our religious leaders are being hypocritical? Why would you be testing somebody a few days to the wedding? You want to, it's a setup. Or what are you trying to achieve? I don't know how he plays out in Islam, but I know that a lot of churches do these things just so that they can catch you on the day.
It's a caning offense in Islam, but we don't do Sharia anymore.
It's a caning offense?
It's a caning offense to fornicate. So we don't do it. And it's a sin against God. It's a sin that, God says is between you and myself. And for growing up, for those who know how to teach religion to their children, you establish a relationship between that child and God. The child can go into covenant with God and know how to abstain for the purpose of worshiping and keeping that relationship directly with God. That was the way I was raised. But here now, like I said earlier, that institution can put down rules, guides, anything that they want to form
I'm
the
saying that should our religious leaders be more open?
They should be. They should be more open. So that does not take away the consequence of what a person has done. They can listen to you, you have goofed, you have done something wrong, you've fallen short or whatever, but you yourself, what shows maturity is that in accepting what you have done, what we are seeing here is somebody trying to cover face, saying, oh, let me just take that abortion, dance on my wedding day as if everything is right. Continue to set the high standard of infallibility before other people, and then you cross and marry, and then you can be dealing with whatever you have done privately. So other members of church who will see you, who have always looked up to you, will be like, until I can do this. But if somebody knows that we are all humans, we are fallible, and, you know, I can do wrong, but this is the consequence of it, and live by that consequence. We're all training people that humans will do something wrong, face the consequence. That's the right chain to go, not to continue to set high standards that, you know, you cannot conform with.
Yeah, because you have...
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, so, you know, even when you steal and you are caught by the law and you go to God and you know, apologize, repent, you will still be sent to prison, even though God has forgiven you. Even if the state decides to forgive you, you will still face out your consequences. And so that is what gives balance, or else we will all become like animals, where you can do things without consequence. You do things without the thoughts that if I am caught, this is what is going to fall out of this. This is how I'm going to act in respect. This is how I'm going to be brought down or taken up in respect of what I've done. So it sort of balances the equilibrium, and everybody needs to accept that. Psychologists also have found that being guilty and feeling shame is counterproductive. They have tested several people over the years, and they realize that when something happens and you feel guilty, you are likely to go back to that same thing again. Because the guilt, after that guilt feeling comes and goes, you are back to the same cycle, because you have felt the guilt, Abby, you are brought down, Abby, you have felt it by yourself, and that's it. You are bound to repeat that cycle or do something even worse. So they ask that you try as much as possible to accept the consequences of what you have done. You must be remorse. And in showing remorse, whatever comes out of it, you're not going to appeal it. You're going to say, okay, is this my punishment? I will serve out that punishment. And that is how you know that you're not likely going back, except, of course, you enjoy the punishment. You enjoy serving out the punishment. You enjoy falling from grace all the time. But normal people don't enjoy that. And so when you serve out that punishment, it shows that you were really not intentional about what you just did.
Let me quickly take this call from Sarah, called on from Egbeda. Welcome to the show, Sarah. Good morning.
Good morning, Topper. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
This topic is quite a very interesting topic, and it's unfortunate, it's our reality of today. So many of our young people are involved in, they are sexually active. Some even have multiple, but it's, like Lima said, it's not the way to go. But the thing is, I'm a counselor in my church, and we do this. But one thing I noticed among other people is you hear, you must not be pregnant, you must not be pregnant, you must not be pregnant. So in other words, are you saying they can go ahead and have sex but not get pregnant because they want to do the wedding in the church? But I always tell people, don't get pregnant shouldn't be the message. The message should go down that you as a Christian child should not be indulging in sexual activities. That's where we are getting it wrong. May God help us as parents to bring up our children the right way, because as parents, you may not be able to control this, but I think with talking here and there, letting them understand the reason why they should abstain.
Okay, so don't get caught. So what Sarah is saying is that what they're preaching is don't get caught, not don't commit the sin. So, and we need to start promoting don't commit the sin as opposed to not getting caught. We have several. You want to say something?
Yes, about the keep pushing the not committing the sin. The only way that a human person can know for sure that if you are committing the sin is if it ends up in pregnancy. And I get what she's saying is, but that message is out there every day, even as a person, if you go to church, you hear it every day. So it's not like there's a scarcity in that word. There's a scarcity in that message. It is out there. We constantly say it, you know, but people are going ahead to involve themselves in sex. So for me, I'm thinking that this conversation now, maybe the hypocrisy we're talking about now, is not even about churches alone or being pregnant. Is now that we know that a lot of Nigerian, I know it's all over the world, but that a lot of Nigerian youths are engaged in premarital sex. Should that be a reason why you are not allowed to get married or get married? Should our messaging be different now that there are lots of people doing this? Are we going to start teaching them, okay, let's not talk to them about abstinence. Let's make sure that we talk to them about, even though you're, protection as Christians. Do you understand what I mean? I just feel that the church is in such a a tough spot right now, where you can see the world around you. You can even see the children in the flock doing the things that worldly people are doing. So what do you tell them? How do you really push that message? And how are you making sure that in the end, okay, all I'm trying to say, in the end, it's a personal thing, but as a system, as a church system, the only way that they can be sure of what you're doing or not is if there's a pregnancy that comes from it.
You've asked really loaded questions, but we'll take Richard, who's called from Enugu. Welcome to the show, Richard.
Yeah, good morning, lady.
Good morning.
Very interesting topic here. So, I'm a Catholic, right?
Yeah.
And in the Catholic Church, we are pro-life. It is more of come as you are, right?
Yes.
So, this pregnancy test and all that, it's because maybe there's a way to test it. That is the reason why they are emphasizing on it. But is pregnancy before marriage the only thing that should be considered? How do you test if the person is a drug dealer? How do you test if he's an armed robber? How do you test for other things?
My chest.
So in the Catholic Church, there's even a standing policy of if you are married but not wedded, the church is ready to even sponsor your wedding. They do mass wedding for all of you. So there was a very interesting one. Even the son is the best man, and the little children are the other smaller children are the bridesmaids, little brides, and all that. So the Catholic Church is more of come as you are. There's a confession and there's a penance for that. So the less we emphasize on just pregnancy alone, I think we will begin to have a different perspective.
So true. That's another perspective.
Good morning, ladies.
Very well, thank you.
Thank you so much for bringing up this very important topic. And this is just a reflection of the fact that most churches are not really getting it right, you know. And the focus in most churches is just speaking about don't get caught, be a virgin. But they forget that most young people are just technical virgins. Some of them are not having sex, but they are doing some other things that could lead to sex. So I think it's a wake-up call for churches to strategize, you know, and start, you know, teaching the young ones on the emphasis should be on sexual purity. If the emphasis is on sexual purity, we would not find ourselves in this kind of situation where, you know, somebody is trying to show himself or herself as the righteous one, you know, by coming to abortion and then just to cover up. So it's a wake-up call for the churches to begin to, you know, strategize on how to send out this message to young ones, focusing on sexual purity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Yeah, so I wanted to say that the first responsibility of the church is to spread the good news, which is preach about salvation, accept Jesus as your Lord and personal Savior. And somehow, because it became an institution where people would gather with their families, they had to, you know, find rules and regulations that would guide each denomination according to the overseer sees fit. You know, sometimes we want to take a whole lot of other responsibilities and put it on the church. The parents have a role to play in raising their kids. The adults that have been raised to a certain level have a role to play in raising themselves. So if you're in any organization and you fall short of the rules of that organization, it is expected that something will be done to sort of, you know, maybe punish you for what you have done. And that is regular with any institution. And we should not water it down because a lot of people are now committing that particular sin just to, you know, find a way to get more people. However, what I see is when this sort of thing happens, every other member sort of isolates you. You are gossiped behind. You are, please, this one that went to go and get belay, don't relate with this, don't relate with that. The church is where anybody can come as they are, though they are not expected to live the way they came. But the church should be more in terms of how the members will now handle this person who has fallen from grace. They should be more forgiving, show more compassion. That will help the person to go through the penance period and come out of it knowing that the love of Christ still remains. So that's what we should preach more. Parents should train their children not to do. Adults, you safe. train yourself not to do. If you choose to do, train yourself to receive the consequence. If you don't want to receive the consequence, please carry your bag and go to traditional people. They are not going to beg you, and they are not going to stop you from wedding with belle. They will wed you with big belle, and that's okay. You still raise your children. The focus should be on becoming a better human being every day as we progress.
You know,
Let me take a quick call from Binkwe. Binkwe has called in from Idris Shaga. Welcome to the show, Binkwe.
Good morning, everyone. I enjoy your program and I've been on with you for a long time. For today, please let us be fair with ourselves and let us be fair with the society. Because we say some things does not matter, that is why we find ourselves in where we are today. If I belong to a group and my group says this is our standard, is it that I abide by the standard or move away from the group? That's number one. Number two is, now even if you have committed the sin, you should be bold enough to face the consequences. If you are not facing the consequences, it's not the fault of the church. It's not the fault of the management of the church. The church also gives room for you, even when you commit such. There's always an opportunity for you to meet with your pastors for counseling, for direction. It is because you don't want to be shamed. That is why you have just hidden yourself somewhere and you are now saying you want to go and do the abortion. It's not the church that asked them to go and do abortion. It's because they don't want to face the shame. And if you don't want to face the shame, then don't go into the crime, don't go into the sin. In the past, if before marriage, if you go to your new husband's house in the old and you are not a virgin, we all know the consequences for our families. And the tradition was kept until a later time when we felt it's too difficult, it's too tough. We are going that.
Go ahead.
So I said that I wanted to say I liked that, we were on a page that established things that I thought, I believe is right. Because recently I started seeing some woke religious leaders coming to say you have to test what you want to buy. It's black market, it's all of those things. And I've been wondering,
black bread market.
Yeah, it's black market. So you need to test it. Because sexual compatibility is the most important part of marriage. You think sexual compatibility is a test that you do with blood sample and all of that in the lab and tactic. They didn't make it seem like sexual compatibility is something that over time you can gain and over time you can even lose, depending on how hormones and experiences, childbirth and all of those changes that happen to the body. And sometimes for even men, some things happen and you just don't have that libido, and sexual compatibility can come and go. It's something that you work at, unlike the way they make it seem like you have to test it. So it's okay. One person was saying that you have to, in fact, no. I can't even say. I can't say some of these things on there. It's so annoying. You know what I
wanted to use. There's a particular example people normally use when they're saying, "Oh, don't judge us," which is the woman who committed adultery in the Bible, and everyone, she was about to be stoned, and Jesus was like, "He who is without sin," and many people use that as an example, like, well, even Jesus let her go, And for me, I feel that message is not really about saying she was okay for committing adultery. He was talking about I think, first of all, that this was a sin that was committed by not just one person. So the offense of singling out one person. And secondly, was also about the shame. So BC mentioned things about when you commit a sin in church, instead of being, sort of embraced and supported by the fold, you're ostracized. So he was talking about shame that, for me, I feel it has to do with there has to be a different way to help someone who has fallen off. There has to be a kinder way. There has to be a much more compassionate way of doing that. So that is not an example of judgment. It's just an example of, now that the person is about to face their consequence, how would you rather do it so that the person learns from it?
Sure. And I think that we've had a very robust conversation around this. All of us agree that abortion is not the right way to go. If you've committed something, if you've gone against the rules of where you are, be humble enough to go through the punishment, take the consequences, and that humility, you've gained strength and your strength of character not to go back into that same space again. You are confident to talk and address the situation. I think that many times we feel like the shame will stay with us forever, but life moves on. One of my pastor friends in my church, youth pastor, had a child 6-7 months after marriage, and he served punishment 1 year sitting at the back of the church, and he was brought back to the front of the church. And I think people must be willing to live with the consequences. So, yes, the advice for the bride-to-be who got pregnant is don't abort your pregnancy. The baby is not a shame. The baby is not a negative consequence. You will live with that consequences for a while, and you'll be better off for it. And I